What if I told you the band that helped inspire Van Halen should have ruled American rock, but collapsed right when success was within reach? In the early 1970s, Montrose sounded like the future of heavy music in America. Their songs blasted out of radios with thick guitar riffs, a fearless singer, and the kind of energy that made crowds explode. Many fans still say their first album is one of the greatest hard rock records ever recorded. And yet the band barely survived 2 albums with their classic lineup before it tore itself apart. So how did a band this powerful fall apart so quickly? To understand that, you have to start with the man who created it, Ronnie Montrose. Before Montrose became a band name, Ronnie Montrose was already building a reputation as one of the most dependable guitarists in the music business. But his rise did not begin with screaming crowds or sold-out arenas. It began quietly, inside recording studios. In the late 1960s and early 1970s, Ronnie became known as the kind of guitarist producers trusted completely. He was precise, disciplined, and extremely focused. While many rock musicians chased fame and chaos, Ronnie treated music like skilled work. If a producer needed the perfect guitar part, Ronnie delivered it. That reputation opened doors quickly. He played guitar on Van Morrison's 1971 album Tupelo Honey, helping shape the energetic hit Wild Night. The song became one of Morrison's most famous recordings, and Ronnie's guitar added the driving rhythm that pushed it forward. But Ronnie was not interested in playing just one style. He explored jazz textures while working with Herbie Hancock. He experimented with early electronic music alongside Beaver and Krauss. Instead of copying British blues bands like many American guitarists were doing at the time, Ronnie studied different sounds and learned how to master them. Still, session work has limits. No matter how talented you are always helping someone else build their vision. And by the early 1970s, Ronnie Montrose wanted to build something of his own. That opportunity appeared when he joined the Edgar Winter Group. Edgar Winter was forming a new rock band after leaving his earlier project White Trash. He needed a guitarist who could bring serious power to the stage, and Ronnie was the perfect choice. On the band's 1972 album, They Only Come Out at Night, Ronnie played the unforgettable guitar parts behind 2 massive songs. The instrumental Frankenstein became a #1 hit on the Billboard charts. Meanwhile, Free Ride became a radio staple that still plays on classic rock stations today. Suddenly, Ronnie Montrose was performing in front of huge audiences across the country. But even as the crowds grew larger, one thing became obvious. Ronnie Montrose was never meant to stay a sideman. He had bigger plans. He wanted to build a band that was louder, tighter, and heavier than anything happening in American rock at the time. And to do that, he needed one final piece, a singer who could match the power of his guitar. But what Ronnie Montrose did not know yet was that the singer he needed was struggling just a few miles away. In 1972, Sammy Hagar was not a future rock star. He was broke. Only a short time earlier, his band had fallen apart after several members were arrested on drug charges. The collapse left Hagar with no steady income and no band. To keep food on the table, he started driving a dump truck for his father-in-law. But even while hauling dirt during the day, Hagar refused to give up music. At night, he still played in small cover bands around the San Francisco Bay Area. People who saw those shows remembered one thing immediately: the voice. Hagar had a powerful, high range that could slice through loud guitars without effort. And on stage, he moved like a firecracker, swinging microphone stands and sprinting across the stage like the show depended on it. Word about the young singer slowly spread through the local scene. Ronnie Montrose heard that buzz. At the same time, Hagar already knew exactly who Ronnie was. He had watched Ronnie perform with the Edgar Winter Group and understood that this guitarist was operating on another level. Then something strange happened. Hagar discovered that Ronnie Montrose lived only about 2 miles away. So, he did something bold. He knocked on Ronnie's front door. Imagine that moment. One of the most respected session guitarists in the industry opens the door, and standing there is a singer with a notebook full of lyrics and a head full of ambition. Hagar asked if Ronnie would listen to a couple songs. Ronnie agreed. Hagar played early versions of Bad Motor Scooter and Make It Last. Songs he had written just days earlier. The performance was rough, but the energy was impossible to ignore. Ronnie listened carefully. Then he looked at Hagar and said 4 simple words. "You've got the gig." Just like that, the heart of Montrose was born. Ronnie already had the rest of the lineup forming. On bass, he recruited Bill Church, a musician he trusted from earlier recording sessions with Van Morrison. Church was steady and reliable, the kind of bassist who locked perfectly with the drums. For drums, Ronnie chose Denny Carmassi, a powerful player known for his heavy mechanical groove. Carmassi could hit the drums hard enough to shake a room, but still keep perfect time. Together, the 4 musicians formed a tight unit almost immediately. But here's the remarkable part. Most bands spend months or even years figuring out their sound. Montrose sounded ready from day one. On April 21, 1973, the band made their public debut with a 45-minute radio broadcast on San Francisco FM legend Tom Donahue's show. The performance was recorded at the famous Record Plant studio in Sausalito. Anyone listening that night heard something special. The guitars were massive. The rhythm section was locked in, and Sammy Hagar's voice soared over the top like a siren. The broadcast quickly caught the attention of one very important person, producer Ted Templeman. Templeman had already worked with Ronnie before, and he immediately recognized that this new band had serious potential. In fact, Templeman believed Montrose might represent the future of American hard rock. So, he helped them secure a deal with Warner Brothers Records. Suddenly, Ronnie Montrose had exactly what he wanted. A band built around precision, power, and raw energy. Now all they needed was the album that would introduce them to the world. And when that record arrived later in 1973, it would quietly change the sound of American rock music forever. When the self-titled Montrose album arrived in October 1973, it did not look like a revolution. It was only 8 songs long, no elaborate concept, no complicated studio tricks, just 4 musicians and a wall of amplifiers. But the moment the needle hit the record, something felt different. The album opened with Rock and within seconds, listeners heard the blueprint for a new kind of American hard rock. Ronnie Montrose's guitar tone was thick and aggressive, but still clear enough that every note punched through the speakers. Behind him, Denny Carmassi hammered out a pounding rhythm, while Bill Church locked the groove together. Then, Sammy Hagar's voice exploded into the mix. It was loud, confident, and fearless. At a time when British bands like Led Zeppelin and Deep Purple dominated heavy rock, Montrose suddenly sounded like America's answer. But here's where it gets wild. The band recorded the album incredibly fast. Producer Ted Templeman believed the best rock records captured raw chemistry rather than perfection. Instead of layering endless studio effects, he kept the sound dry and direct, like the band was performing live in the room. That approach made the songs feel powerful and immediate. The second track, Bad Motor Scooter, quickly became a fan favorite. The song told the story of a rebellious rider tearing down the highway, and Ronnie created one of the coolest guitar tricks in rock history. Using his instrument, he imitated the sound of a revving motorcycle engine. Crowds loved it. Soon, the effect became a highlight of every Montrose concert. Another standout was Space Station No. 5, a song that mixed aggressive riffs with science fiction lyrics about futuristic travel and cosmic adventure. Ronnie experimented with unusual guitar controls to produce eerie sounds that shifted and bent like signals from another planet. For listeners hearing the song late at night on FM radio, it sounded completely different from anything else on the dial. But the track that would define Montrose forever came a little later on the album, Rock Candy. The song began with a slow, stomping drum beat before Ronnie unleashed one of the heaviest guitar riffs of the decade. It was simple, direct, and unbelievably powerful. Many rock historians later described Rock Candy as a blueprint for arena rock. And one young guitarist in Southern California was paying very close attention. His name was Eddie Van Halen. Eddie later admitted that he was obsessed with the Montrose album when it first came out. He studied Ronnie Montrose's thick chord style and aggressive tone, and those ideas would eventually evolve into the explosive sound of Van Halen a few years later. Even Van Halen's producer would come from the Montrose world, Ted Templeman. But here is the strange part. Despite the album's energy and influence, the record company did not know what to do with Montrose. Warner Brothers already had successful rock acts like the Doobie Brothers, and heavy bands like Deep Purple in their lineup. Executives viewed Montrose as something in between, and they were unsure how to market them. As a result, the label gave the album only modest promotion. When the record first hit the Billboard chart, it barely cracked the top 200, eventually peaking at number 133. On paper, it looked like a disappointment, but that was not the full story. Across America, FM radio stations started playing the songs constantly. DJs loved the raw sound and the tight songwriting. Fans who heard the album late at night often became lifelong supporters. Slowly, quietly, Montrose built a reputation as one of the most exciting live bands in the country. And once they started touring, audiences discovered something even bigger. Montrose did not just sound powerful on record. On stage, they were explosive. Once Montrose hit the road, their reputation grew even faster. The band opened shows for major acts like Aerosmith, Kiss, Journey, and Mott the Hoople. At many of those concerts, something unusual kept happening. The opening band was stealing the show. Fans who arrived early, expecting a warm-up act, instead found themselves staring at a group that sounded louder, tighter, and hungrier than the headliners. Ronnie's guitar roared through massive amplifiers, while Denny Carmassi's drums pounded like a construction crew tearing down a building. And in the center of it all was Sammy Hagar. Hagar attacked the stage with wild energy. He spun microphone stands, sprinted across the stage, and sang like every performance might be his last. People who saw those early shows often said the same thing. You could not take your eyes off him. One famous performance happened in September 1973 at the legendary Winterland Ballroom in San Francisco. Montrose was opening for Mott the Hoople, and the crowd expected a routine rock show. Instead, they witnessed chaos. During one song, Hagar began swinging his microphone in wide circles, copying the famous stage move used by The Who's Roger Daltrey. But something went wrong. The microphone smashed directly into bassist Bill Church's head. Blood immediately started running down Church's face. For a moment, the crowd thought the show might stop, but it did not. A roadie rushed onto the stage with a towel, wiped away the blood, and Church kept playing like nothing happened. The band finished the song while the audience roared in disbelief. Moments like that built Montrose's reputation as a fearless live act. Another important moment came during a show at Detroit's Cobo Hall in the summer of 1973. The band shared the stage with Aerosmith, another young group trying to prove themselves. That night, Montrose felt something shift. For the first time, they truly felt like a national rock band. Crowds were reacting. Radio stations were spinning their songs. Promoters wanted them on big tours. Everything seemed to be pointing towards superstardom. But beneath the excitement, a serious problem was beginning to grow. Ronnie Montrose had built the band with strict discipline. He believed musicians should rehearse constantly, stay focused, and treat the music like a serious craft. Sammy Hagar saw things differently. Hagar loved the excitement of rock and roll. He enjoyed the freedom, the energy, and the spotlight. He wanted the band to lean even harder into their heavy sound and capitalize on the momentum they were building with fans. At first, the difference in personalities seemed manageable, but as the band prepared to record their second album in 1974, those differences started turning into open conflict. Ronnie had begun to feel uncomfortable being labeled only as a heavy metal guitarist. After years of playing different musical styles, he wanted to experiment again. He imagined adding more variety to the band's sound, including softer songs and unusual arrangements. Hagar strongly disagreed. From his perspective, Montrose had finally discovered a winning formula. The audience loved the heavy riffs. The concerts were selling out. Changing direction now felt like abandoning the very thing that made them successful. The disagreement slowly poisoned the recording sessions for the band's second album, titled Paper Money. What had once been a tight, united group now felt divided. And here's where it gets even worse. During those sessions, Ronnie began rejecting some of Hagar's song ideas entirely. Instead of building the album around the chemistry that powered the first record, he started looking outside the band for different material. The collaboration that once defined Montrose was beginning to crack, and soon, the tension would explode in a way no one expected. When Montrose entered the studio in 1974 to record their second album, the atmosphere felt completely different from the first record. During the debut, the band had been united by excitement. Everything was new, everyone was hungry, the songs came together naturally. Now the energy had changed. Ronnie Montrose was determined to prove he was more than a heavy rock guitarist. He wanted the new record to show wider musical ability. That meant experimenting with different sounds and bringing in outside material. For Sammy Hagar, that decision made no sense. The band had finally built momentum with the heavy style that defined the first album. Fans loved the massive riffs and raw power. From Hagar's perspective, changing direction now felt like slamming the brakes just as the car was reaching top speed. But Ronnie was the band leader, and his authority inside the studio became impossible to ignore. Several of Hagar's song ideas were rejected without much discussion. Instead, Ronnie focused on songs written by outside writers and even included cover material. The result was an album called Paper Money that felt very different from the band's debut. The title track, Paper Money, carried a strong groove, but the record also featured songs like Underground and Connection, which leaned toward a looser and sometimes softer sound. Some fans appreciated the variety. Others felt the band had lost the raw focus that made the first album so exciting. But the biggest conflict centered around one particular song, I Got the Fire. The track exploded with energy and quickly became one of the album's strongest moments. Hagar insisted he had written the lyrics and vocal melody, shaping the song into the aggressive anthem fans heard on the record. However, when the album credits were first discussed, Hagar noticed something troubling. His name was missing from the songwriting credit. When he confronted Ronnie Montrose about it, the guitarist reportedly brushed the issue aside, claiming it had simply been an oversight. But the conversation did not end there, because songwriting credit determines publishing royalties, which means money every time the song is played, sold, or licensed. When Hagar pushed the issue, the discussion turned heated. According to Hagar, Ronnie eventually snapped back with a bitter accusation. All you care about is the money. For Hagar, that comment revealed a deeper problem. The trust inside the band was disappearing. At the same time, Ronnie's strict personal rules began creating even more tension. He had always been strongly anti-drug and believed musicians should stay disciplined at all times. But by this point, he was enforcing those rules more aggressively on the rest of the group. What once felt like professional standards now felt like control. Despite the growing conflict, Paper Money still performed well commercially. When it was released in 1974, the album climbed higher on the charts than their debut, reaching number 65 on the Billboard 200. On paper, the band looked successful, but inside Montrose, the foundation was crumbling. Then came the tour. In 1974 and early 1975, the band traveled across Europe, performing shows that should have pushed them toward international fame. European audiences were just beginning to discover Montrose, and the reaction was strong. Reviews praised the group's power and tight musicianship. One review in Belgium even compared Sammy Hagar to Robert Plant, the legendary singer of Led Zeppelin. For most bands, that kind of comparison would have been a compliment. For Ronnie Montrose, it felt like an insult, because the spotlight was no longer focused on him. And during a quiet moment while the band traveled through Paris, the tension finally exploded in a way no one expected. The end of the original Montrose did not arrive with a dramatic public announcement. It happened quietly. In early 1975, the band was traveling through Europe during their tour when the tension finally snapped. According to Sammy Hagar, the moment came in the back seat of a car while the band was heading to Paris for upcoming shows at the famous Olympia Theater. Without warning, Ronnie Montrose turned toward him and delivered the news. The band was finished. Just like that, no long discussion, no attempt to work things out. The singer who had helped define the Montrose sound was suddenly out. For fans, the breakup made little sense. The band was gaining momentum, drawing strong crowds, and building a loyal following. From the outside, it looked like Montrose was only beginning its rise. But inside the band, the relationship between Ronnie and Hagar had already collapsed. Ronnie tried to continue using the Montrose name, he rebuilt the group with new musicians, including singer Bob James and keyboard player Jim Alcivar. The lineup recorded the album Warner Brothers Presents Montrose in 1975, and followed it with Jump On It in 1976. The music leaned toward a more polished style with funk and space rock influences, but the magic was gone. The audience that fell in love with the raw power of the original lineup never connected with the new direction. By 1977, Montrose quietly disbanded. Yet the band's influence did not disappear. In fact, it grew. A young guitarist named Eddie Van Halen openly described himself as a Montrose fanatic. Early Van Halen club shows regularly featured covers of Rock Candy and Make It Last. And producer Ted Templeman would later use the Montrose debut as a sonic reference when producing Van Halen's first album. Years later, the connection became even stronger when Sammy Hagar joined Van Halen in 1985. In many ways, Montrose had come full circle. The band itself may have burned out quickly, but its sound shaped the future of hard rock. For a brief moment in the early 1970s, Montrose showed what American heavy rock could become. And sometimes, that is the strangest part of music history. The bands that change everything are not always the ones that last the longest.